I'm Desko. We're going to talk about what characteristics are most important for your success. Jerry did a great job at laying a foundation. And it's a foundation that's really relevant to everyone's life. And you know what? I don't know where you are in your spiritual journey, but whether you're a Christ follower or not, what Jerry said is just true, which means it's true whether somebody believes it or not. That Christ really lays a foundation for who we are. And even people who don't profess and claim to know Christ, that's still true of them. That God created them in His image and likeness, and He gave them value, worth, meaning, and that He has a purpose for their life. And that's true. And so, Jerry, as well as the ministry of Johnny and Friends, they want people to know that because that makes a difference. But we're going to shift gears, and we're going to talk now about building on top of that, and what does it take to really succeed? And I'm not talking about at the philosophical level. What does it take to succeed in life? Well, follow Jesus. Okay, but what do I do tomorrow when I go for an interview? How do I succeed at a real job? How do I get into a college? We're going to talk about how what Jerry said applies, but at a much more specific level. Now, Jerry can tell you a lot of things about me, most of which are not true, and the ones that are true you should hear anyway. I got to know Jerry when I was teaching at a graduate program in organizational leadership, and Jerry was a student. We became good friends ever since then. And Jerry will tell you of many things that I am, I have a spiritual gift of frustration, meaning I have a tendency to annoy people, especially Jerry. And so I am not here as an expert on anything with disability. I have a daughter that's disabled who's here today, but that's not my expertise. I bring to you an opportunity to learn from what I have learned as a consultant and leader in ministry and organizations, and that's what I'm going to share with you. What is it that I'm seeing that really is causing people to succeed in this day and in this age? I want to ask you a question because, if I don't start asking you questions, you're going to get lazy, tired, and sleepy, okay? So besides character, because if you were to say, what does it take to succeed? Everybody starts with the easy ones. Honesty. Really? I mean, really? You can't do any better than that? Who's going to say lying, stealing, and cheating? Right? Nobody's going to say that. So let's assume those are accurate and true, right? Which we know to be the case. What do you believe are the three greatest predictors of a successful person? Just you call them out. And it doesn't have to be just the registered participants, parents, friends, others, Dave back there, Jerry, anybody, Jennifer, okay? Just what do you think it takes to succeed? Call it out. Determination. What else?
Working hard.
Working hard, kind of related to determination. Good.
Perseverance.
Perseverance, related to determination. So we got a good little cluster forming there. What else?
Calm under pressure.
What's that?
Calm
under pressure, being able to handle stress. By the way, very important. There are some people that have a very low stress tolerance. And when we do consulting and help organizations hire people, we look at that person's ability to handle pressure. Because unless you're going to have the most trivial, menial job on this earth, you're going to have pressure in most jobs, right? Your parents can testify to that. People here who are working right now can testify to that. If you're in college, you can testify to that. That pressure is part of life, right? And you got to learn how to deal with it. What else?
Good listening.
What's that?
Good listening.
Good listening skills. Yes, very important, right? Most people get annoyed when people don't listen to them. And that skill set, which is ever increasing in its relevance, of how to be a good listener and how to make sure people are tracking with you. Anything else?
Teamwork.
Teamwork. Yeah, that ability to kind of get along with others, which we're going to talk a little bit about. Excellent. Let me tell you something. I'm going to ask you a question I don't want you to answer. Do you ultimately in your life want people to feel sorry for you or inspired by you? If you want people to feel sorry for you, just play your disability card over and over and over again. Right? Woe is me. I can't do this. I'm in a wheelchair. I have trouble with this. I was born without this. Just play that card over and over and over again. And you will get what? Empathy and what? Sympathy, right? But the reality is, empathy and sympathy will get you nowhere in this life. It'll get you nothing. It's short-lived. Well, I feel for you. Then they go on to their next conversation and they hire that person over there. They felt for you, but they hired this person. The reality is God has not called you and called others to feel sorry for you, right? And I think, Jerry, you know this well. You and I have had this conversation many times. If you play your disability card as your only card, it'll get old rather quickly, and you will get nowhere in this life, and you will not inspire others to meaning and purpose. So today, I want to walk you through a summary of what research is showing and what I would believe to be true in my observations. I believe someone you're going to hear from later, Dave Shoemaker, would testify these three are some of the most important traits and characteristics to succeed in this life. And if you can develop and capture these at your age, regardless of your disability, you will be farther ahead than many people who have no visible disability at all. Because as Jerry said, there's a lot of disabilities in life. Some people you see them, some people you don't. I work with a lot of normal people who are very abnormal. Okay? They don't walk with a cane. They don't walk with they don't get pushed around in a wheelchair. But let me tell you, emotionally, relationally, and functionally, they might as well be, because they are not functional. You can be highly functional even though you're disabled. You can be highly influential even though you're disabled. You can make a difference in this world even though you're disabled. Now let me tell you, and let me put a qualifier. If anyone in your life has told you you can be anything that you want and you can do anything you set your mind to, that is a blatant lie. That is a byproduct of the self-esteem movement of the 1970s that said if we just tell people enough that they can do anything that they want and be anything that they want, they'll feel good and maybe they'll actually do it. That has never proven to be true. Actually, all it has done is it has led people to a life of disappointment. Ever watch the TV show American Idol? You see when they do those initial screenings, people who've been told they can sing. Right? And their mom and dad and their friend and their youth pastor say, "You're great, just keep singing. You're good." And then all of a sudden they get fed to the judges. And the judges, for the first time in their life, what? Told them the truth. You're horrible. Like, you can't get any worse than you are. And so the reality is, you cannot be anything that you want in this world. But one thing I can assure you is, you can definitely be the person God wants you to be. You can definitely be a person who is going to have purpose and meaning in this life and is going to make a difference. That I guarantee you. But that doesn't mean you can be anything you want. The skills that I'm going to talk about today are the skills that it takes to make a difference, to actually succeed in this life, to actually succeed in a place of employment, in a job, a career, in a college campus, whatever it is, and wherever it is that God leads you. Now, the first characteristic is called what I call resolve. It's determination. Somebody said that when I asked that question, by the way. And it basically means you need to show grit in this life and not quit. You need to show grit and not quit. I want you to stop for 1 second and think. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to think about it. If you want to write down your answer, you can, but you're not going to have to share it publicly. When was the last time that you set your mind to something, but you didn't follow through on your commitment? Could have been an assignment, a homework assignment. It could have been applying for a job. It could have been, I'm going to lose some weight. I'm going to read my Bible. I'm going to save a little more money. I'm going to spend a little less money. I'm going to treat my brother or sister a little nicer. I'm going to say thank you to my parents once in a while, whatever it is. When was the last time you made the determination to do something and didn't follow through? Everybody got something in their mind? Okay. Now let me ask you the question, and I don't want you to answer, why? Why didn't you follow through? The reason you didn't follow through is because you did not have grit. You did not have a resolve to do something even though it didn't feel that great at the moment. It didn't feel exciting. It wasn't fun. It was boring. I don't like it. That's why we don't do things, right? We generally gravitate towards what's fun, comfortable, and enjoyable. There's a growing trend, and this trend has been developing actually for many, probably for the past 5 decades now, and it keeps growing. The growing trend is this. There are more people who sign up but don't show up. There's a growing number of people who start but don't finish. And there's an increasing number of people who make a promise but don't deliver. The common thread through all of that, they are people who are not resolved to show grit, but rather there are people who what? Quit. Quit. We are a culture of quitting. You sign up for something, I don't feel like doing that anymore, and what's mom and dad say? Okay, I want my child to be happy, right? You make a commitment, you don't follow through on it. You say, I'm going to succeed at school, I'm going to get an A in this class. Do I want to play Xbox or do that homework? I think Xbox wins. That's an issue of determination, resolve, grit. Interesting. Let me ask you a question. When you think about this. Anybody here play an instrument? Musical instrument? What do you play?
Saxophone.
Saxophone. Okay, great. Anybody else play any instrument? Well, I was born musically. What do you play, Jennifer?
Guitar.
Guitar? I was born musically illiterate. Okay, so literally, I don't understand anything about music. My daughter will tell you I don't even know how to play music. Like on a radio. Like I don't even know how to do it. I am totally musically illiterate. But I am fascinated by people who are not musically illiterate. How many hours of practice do you think it takes to become a world-class pianist? 10 to 20 hours a day. That's a lot, right? That's a lot of practice. How about over a period of years? How many hours total? So what do you think is a bigger number? What's the total number? What's that?
10,000.
You know, you're my daughter, but were you cheating or what? Like, how did you know that? It's 10,000 hours to become a world-class pianist. You can tell I'm really weird. Like, I actually study these things. You know, it's amazing how strange I am. I always tell people I'm very boring, but I have a good time. 10,000 hours. Now, if you want to be a second-class pianist underneath world-class, how many hours? This is actually based on research.
8,000.
5,000. It's 5,000 hours. Research has shown that actually, if you want to be great at something, or it's what's considered an expert at something, and this was done by a brain researcher at Carnegie Mellon University, if you want to develop expertise at something, you have to work 60 hours a week for 10 years, nonstop, for you to develop something called expertise. If you want to be okay at something, just cut it in half. So you want to be world class? 10,000 hours of piano practice. If you don't want to be world class, practice 5,000 hours. You'll be pretty good, but you won't be the best. What is that research showing? What separates people who are world class at something versus everyone else is not some unique intrinsic talent that God kind of rained down on you but skipped you, rained on you, skipped you. That's generally not what research has shown. What research has shown is that they work harder than anyone else around. Isn't that interesting? So it's not the person that says, oh, you know what, I'm no good at science. I just got to get through this class. I'm no good at it. No, that has nothing to do with whether you're good at it. It's an issue of how much time you put into it. That's not a message you hear much anymore, is it? Just pursue what you're good at. Nobody ever says, pursue something and work like a dog at it, and you'll get better at it. That is a sign of resolve or grit. Psychologists are actually now studying something, believe it or not, that word grit, real academic, right? Something you'd hear in research institutions. No, grit, actually it grew out of research institutions. One of the world-renowned psychologists at the University of Pennsylvania actually is one of the ones using the term now, grit. A group of psychologists are studying what is it that causes some people to be exceptionally good and others not to be, and they're finding it's grit. So for example, we now know that more girls graduate from college than guys, right? Is that because they're smarter? Au contraire. What they're finding is actually that up through junior high into the junior high years, they're neck and neck. But then guys start to get disengaged and lose what? Grit. And girls work harder at school than boys. SAT scores, girls are not all, it's pretty similar. If anything, boys are higher, believe it or not. But when it comes to actual college graduation, girls exceed boys. Isn't that interesting? They have found grit to actually be a better predictor of success than SAT scores. When they went to West Point, they found that the first 3 months, which is like what it's like what's called hell summer, or hell week or whatever, where they literally put them through the horrible circumstances to see if they'll even make it. And so some West Points start out and they don't even make it through the first 3 months. What they have found is when they went up there and studied these West Point freshmen, grit was a better determiner than SAT or academic excellence. Real estate agents, it was a better determiner of who sold more homes. The National Spelling Bee, it was a determiner of who was going to be the better speller. Special forces, SEAL Team 6 and all that type of cool stuff, it's a determiner of who makes it through the training and who doesn't. Grit, grit, and grit. Now, I want to show you something and then tell you another story. Watch this video. Is there any sound? Just while she's playing that, did you stop that?
I did.
Okay. I want you to watch what happens here. This is from 1964, NFL. Do you see what this guy's doing? I'm going to tell you play-by-play. Okay, I always wanted to be a sports announcer. Right? So, play-by-play. What did he just do? What did he just do? Yeah, he ran the wrong way. Right? That guy's name, Jim Marshall. Played for the Minnesota Vikings, actually became one of the most recognized names in NFL history. Also became known as one of the worst sporting blunders in history. Still talked about to this day, even though it happened in 1964. He ran the wrong way. Here he is now, standing there, realizing, can you imagine what he did? He's being congratulated by the other team members because he just scored a safety, right? And he's like shocked. So he's going in. He's spiking the ball. He is thrilled. And the other guy's coming up saying, thanks, pal. We really appreciate you helping us out here. Just totally embarrassing. But he wasn't the only one that ran the wrong way. We have two illustrations in the Bible. One is John Mark. Here's what we know about John Mark. He was a disciple. He traveled with Paul and Barnabas. He did the missionary stuff in the book of Acts. But we know something, that on one of their trips, picture going on a missionary trip, right? And let's say we all go together and we go to Haiti. And we get to Haiti and I'm going to come over here and pick on you because you look like a nice guy. So I'm going to come over here and pick on Brian. So we all go to Haiti, and like we're only 2 days into the trip, and Brian says, you know, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm going home. Brian, we're counting on you. We got work to do, right? I'm not feeling in my groove, okay? And he goes home. That is what John Mark did. He quit the team midway through a trip. And Paul never liked that. And so later on in the book of Acts, they're ready to go on the next trip, and Barnabas says, hey, we're going to take John Mark with us. And Paul said, over my dead body. You remember that story in the book of Acts where Paul and Barnabas so disagreed over John Mark that they angrily parted company. John Mark ran the wrong way. But you know what? Just like Jim Marshall, later on in the book of 2 Timothy, guess who is with Paul? And Paul identifies as one of his faithful servants. John Mark. He's back. He's back. Right? Another one, Onesimus. You ever heard that name? Anybody know who he was? Who is he?
Yeah, he's found in the book of Philemon.
You are good. If I had a reward, here, take one of Jimmy's baseball. I got one more reward up here, so be good. And if you fall asleep, I'm going to throw one at you. That's really good that you know that, because that's kind of a small little book that not a lot of people read. Excellent book. Philemon. Philemon is a successful slave owner, meaning he's a successful guy, wealthy. He is a follower of Christ, and he still had slaves, which was not uncommon back then. Not all slaves were a horrible situation. A lot of slaves, it was kind of a job for them, but they didn't have complete freedom. And so Onesimus runs away from Philemon, and he ends up on Paul's doorstep. And Paul takes him under his wing, likes him, and works with him, and basically he sends him back to Philemon, and Philemon could have done what? Could have killed him. He had every right under Roman law to kill him, a runaway slave. Paul sends a little note. By the way, my friend Philemon, don't forget you owe me your life too. Right? What did Onesimus do? He ran the wrong way. He bailed on his master. Jim Marshall ran the wrong way against his team. And John Mark ran away from Paul, Barnabas, and the work that they were doing for the gospel. What do they all have in common, though? Not that they ran the wrong way, but they what? Corrected it. They didn't quit. And I really encourage you to think about this. Do not use your disability. Do not use the challenges you face. And let me tell you, I know some of you face challenges that most of us in this room would never know what it's like to live with. Do not use that ever as an excuse. Because you could either have people feel sorry for you, or you could have people be inspired by you. And if you want people to be inspired by you, you need to show determination. And if anybody knows determination, it's most of you. Because most of you live with determination every day when you get up, and it takes you 3 hours to get ready versus it taking me 10 minutes. That's determination, right? You understand grit because you've lived with it much of your life, if not all of your life. My point, though, is that is not just a character trait, that is a success trait. That trait will help you, and I believe later on when Dave and his business owners are here, they will testify that people who show determination are more likely to succeed in a place of employment, get hired and retained than others. Diana, are we going to be okay, or are you not sure?
I hope so.
Okay, if not, don't worry about it. Don't sweat it. I
They
don't.
changed smart cards on me, so I turned up the volume.
All right, we'll see. If it doesn't play, no big deal. The second trait is relate well to others, even those you don't like. So not only be determined, but be friendly. Let me ask you a question. If I were to ask you how smart you are, how would you answer? How smart are you? How would you answer? Kelsey. problem when you sit in the front row. Haven't you learned that yet? You know, 2 years of college and you're still sitting right there? You're like, you got written on you. Go ahead and ask me. Okay? How smart are you? How would you answer that question?
Well, this is Jerry's favorite answer, so I think I'm going to go with that. I don't know.
I don't know. Oh, Jerry. Oh, this intern knows you well. Most of the time when we're asked how smart we are, we give academic answers. Oh, I have a 4.0. Or on my SATs, I did 1320. Or, right? We give those kinds of answers. But you know, there is more than just that type of intelligence. That's called what? Academic intelligence. There's more than one type of intelligence. Years ago, there was only one, IQ. You rated everything by IQ. Oh, that person, you know, your little cousin Alfred. Oh, he's smart. He has an IQ up. Yeah, but he's weird. Okay? And so we all realize that, yeah, there's IQ, but IQ doesn't tell you everything, right? Because there's a lot of smart people that are just downright weird. Okay? Nobody in this room, I understand. But my point is, there's multiple intelligences that God gives. Some people have the intelligence that are what I would call academic skill sets. Other people, though, are given other skill sets. For example, musical skill sets. That's a type of intelligence. In fact, researchers look at anywhere from 7 to 9 different forms of intelligence now. It used to be 1, now it's up to about 7, 8, or 9, depending on which writer and researcher you're looking at. There are some that are good at artistic smart, right? Some people are good at math smart. Some people are good at relational smart. And I want to say to you that if you want to succeed in a meaningful way and influence others, you need to pursue being relationally smart. As a consultant to organizations, it has been my experience that the number one reason people are losing jobs is because, as simple as this, they can't function and get along with others. They don't know how to play well. They haven't learned those basic skills of compromise, friendliness, reaching out to others, sociability. The whole field of research is called emotional intelligence. Remember? Intellectual intelligence, now emotional intelligence. And actually, more people are losing their job over not being emotionally smart than are not being intellectually smart. Let me tell you how this works. Dr. Daniel Goleman, premier researcher on emotional intelligence, talks about this. He said, "It no longer matters how smart you are, it matters much more how you manage your emotions and relationships." He talks about resonance and dissonance. Resonance skills and dissonance skills. Resonance skills are you resonate, right? One of those musical terms. You resonate with others. You're in tune with others. You get along with others. People are attracted to you. It's attractability. Dissonance means people are repelled by you. You push them away by your behaviors. You annoy people away from you. A classic example would be, anybody watch Big Bang Theory? Sheldon, right?
Yes.
Sheldon, I mean, he's a classic example of somebody who is what? Intellectually off the chart smart, but socially inept, right? Just doesn't get it sometimes. My cousin, I have my brother-in-law, a sharp guy, excellent guy, lives down south. It took everything he had to get through college. Like, it's a miracle. All right, I mean, it's just a miracle that he pulled it off. He was really bad at the college thing. But he finally got through. Do you know he's now a very successful insurance agent? One of the most successful in his company? How did he do that? He did that because he is phenomenal with relationships. He's friendly. He attracts people. He doesn't repel them. Socially, they like to be with him. He's enjoyable. He listens to others. He's helpful. Isn't that interesting? IQ, not that he didn't have IQ, mind you, but that just wasn't his bailiwick, you know what I mean? He didn't like, that wasn't his greatest hobby, was study. Sports would have been his greatest hobby in college. But later on in life, he's thriving. Why? Because there's more than one intelligence. Now, let me give you a little trick here of how to succeed in the workplace and in college and other settings relationally. There's a significant amount of research that talks about how to do this. And here's a little tool for you. Research has shown if you want to keep relationships healthy with people around you, you need to have 5 positive interactions versus every negative one. This has been proven in marriage, and it's been proven in business teams. It's been proven all over the world. This is called the Lozada scale by a clinical psychologist from Chile. And he came up with the term. It's been replicated in the United States in multiple studies, including in marriage and family therapy. And what they have found is in teams and relationships that have 5-to-1 ratio, 5 good interactions for 1 difficult one, they make it and perform better. Marriage, 5-to-1. It doesn't say 5-to-0. See, everybody thinks if you have conflict in a workplace or with someone who's a friend or in a marriage, that's a problem. It doesn't show that at all. Conflict is normal. Conflict is part of living in a broken world in which we're all broken and contribute to it. But actually what they have found is it's not whether you have negative interaction, it's how many positive interactions you have to balance that out. 1 major tough interaction, 5 good ones. So what does that mean if you're working in the work world? If I'm working with Lauren, it's Lauren, right? If Lauren and I were working together and she's my boss and I just kind of get angry at her because she's doing things that annoy me and I say something maybe I shouldn't say or we have a rough conversation, is that bad in and of itself? No. But if I have another one tomorrow and then 2 more the next day and then next week, Lauren's going to be very bored with Jay and very tired of me because I'm going to be annoying her all the time. However, if we have a tough conversation, but then there's future good conversations, compliments, affirmations, thank yous, how's your family doing, all those kinds of normal, positive interactions that make people feel okay and better, that actually will work. It'll work very well. So remember that, 5-to-1. If you are in a situation where it's conflict, negative interaction, negative, you are walking a very, very thin rope. And that's the rope you're going to probably hang on. Because you will not make it long term in an environment. Any employer will tell you, an employee who over and over again is great on them, sandpaper, rough edges, eventually, Dave, am I correct? Even if they're a good performer, they're going. Because the ratio is so far off. So monitor, and you can do this in your own home, by the way. You can do this with your parents, with your siblings, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever you got. How many positive interactions? So we as parents, let me tell you something. Parents are called to annoy their children. Okay? That's not true. But it just happens, right? And we annoy our kids, and our kids annoy us. That's just part of life. But the reality is, if I am having negative conversation with one of my kids or my wife, and there's not enough positive emerging that I'm seeing that counterbalance, I better regroup and start to think through my style of conversation. Does that make sense to you? So you not only need to have determination, you need to have friendliness as well. Let's see if we can see what...
Good, you're just in time. I believe I've isolated the algorithm for making friends.
Sheldon, there is no algorithm for making friends.
Well, hear him out. If he's really onto something, we could open a booth at Comic-Con, make a fortune. See, my initial approach to Kripke had the same deficiencies as those that plagued Stu the Cockatoo when he was new at the zoo.
Stu the cockatoo? Yes. He's new at the zoo.
It's a terrific perfect book. I've distilled its essence into a simple flow chart that will guide me through the process.
Have you thought about putting him in a crate while you're out of the apartment?
Hello, Christy. Yeah, Sheldon Cooper here. It occurred to me that you hadn't returned any of my calls because I hadn't offered any concrete suggestions for pursuing our friendship. Yet perhaps the two of us might share a meal together. Yeah, I see. Well, then perhaps you'd have time for a hot beverage. Popular choices include tea, coffee, cocoa. I see. No, but don't hang up yet. But what about a recreational activity? I bet we share some common interests. You tell me an interest of yours. Really? On actual horses? Tell me another interest of yours. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I have no desire to get in the water till I absolutely have to. Tell me another interest of yours.
He's stuck in an infinite loop.
I can fix it.
It's interesting, but isn't ventriloquism by definition a solo activity? Yeah. Tell me another interest of yours. Is there any chance you like monkeys? What is wrong with you? Everybody likes monkeys. Hang on, Kripke. A loop counter and an escape to the least objectionable activity. Howard, that's brilliant. I'm surprised you saw that.
Gee, why can't Sheldon make friends?
That last interest strikes me as the least objectionable, and I would like to propose that we do that together. Tomorrow. Yes, I'll pay. Goodbye. All right. Time to learn rock climbing.
Isn't that great? Not a disclaimer, Big Bang Theory is not always the cleanest show, but it has some amazing human nuance illustrations in it, including behaviors of Sheldon, which are basically taking kind of some social dynamics that are not the healthiest and just playing them out and exaggerating them, right? But the reality is you can't come up with an algorithm for relational skills. You develop relational skills by practicing. You model them after other people. You know, God calls you to be a relational person. Some people do it better than others. Some people it's a little more natural. But the reality is everybody in this room has the ability to build and maintain relationships with other people. And when you go and interview for a job, they're going to want to know, can you get along with others? Because the reality is they don't want you there if you can't. They don't have the time or the energy to manage all the conflicts that are going to come by somebody who just can't connect well with other people. So we've talked about, too, this determination or resolve. We've talked about the issue of friendliness or relating well to others. This last skill set that we're talking about is reframing your thinking. And Jerry, you delved into this a little bit. Reframing your thoughts from destructive to constructive. From destructive to constructive. Destructive thoughts are traps that catch you, and next thing you know, they just draw you down. These thoughts include catastrophic thinking, pessimistic thinking, angry, blaming others. Let me give you an illustration. I was just talking to somebody recently, and they just went to the doctor, and they just had a test, and the test showed something. And what happens to our minds when we go to a doctor and say, we see something? What we want doctors, the only time you want doctors to see something is like when they do a brain scan that you have one. That's good, okay? But when we see something, that's not good. And so what happens instantly when you hear noise like that? You get worried about it. That's exactly right. We worry. And our mind does what? Catastrophic thinking, which is what Jerry was hinting at. Oh my word, they see something. I gotta go to the internet. Oh no! Oh my word! You know, I mean, I've got 5 different illnesses now. You know, and every one of them is deadly. And next thing you know, your physiological response of your body goes into anxiety mode. You start to sweat. you start to worry, you start to get anxious, you start to get depressed. And all of that, and you literally know what? Nothing. That is a destructive thought. And you want to be able to frame your thinking in a positive or constructive way. Pessimism and optimism are both contagious. So do you want people to catch optimism from you or pessimism from you? Constructive thinking, basically, how do you do that? You catch the destructive thoughts early before it becomes permanent. Does that make sense? So here's an illustration. You go to a class and you have a teacher, and the teacher is someone that you just don't like. And the next thing you know, you start framing the worst thoughts about that teacher. That teacher's annoying. I really don't like them. They're probably pathetic. I guess they couldn't get a job anywhere else. Next thing you know, you got this record play, and it just keeps playing. Have you ever been stuck in a store and they play that music, and it gets stuck on one song and over, and it just keeps playing, and you say, I'm gonna smash that speaker if I can just reach it. I'm gonna break it because it drives you crazy. That's what happens in our brain. Our brain can play things over and over and over again. You can play good things over and over and over again, or you can play destructive things over and over and over again. And what you have to do is you have to intersect that destructive pattern quickly before it becomes embedded as a pattern in the brain. Because the brain is a pattern-making machine that God's given us. And you can embed in it that negative thought, and it can become a trait in your life. And everything it's the Eeyore effect. Oh no, woe is me. I can't do anything right. Sometimes you got to catch yourself early. Having some of those thoughts is not unusual at all, and it's not even bad. It's when you allow that recording to play over and over and over again. So one of the things you have to do is you have to catch it early. And how do you do that? You catch it early and you start to look for other options called good options. You say, Jay, is this something you're just whipping up here? Is this like Jay's world, or is there something behind this? Actually, there is a whole body of research behind this, and they're now implementing this in the U.S. military. Because all of these soldiers are coming back from the Gulf War and the Afghanistan war. And what are they coming back with? What's the illness? Post-traumatic stress disorder, right? PTSD, right? Post-traumatic stress disorder. So what they discovered was these poor soldiers are embedding in their mind that bad things have happened, and that means I'm now broken, and therefore I can't function normally again. What the psychologists have found was that's not true. So for example, they went to West Point and they said, how many here at West Point have ever heard of post-traumatic stress disorder? Everybody's hand goes up. Then they asked them this question, how many of you have ever heard of post-traumatic growth? Nobody's hand went up. And yet, there is research that has shown that people who go through trauma actually grow in ways that other people don't grow. They experience things that other people haven't experienced. They have strength and stamina and character that develops that other people don't have. They actually become better at certain things that other people don't become better at. So what they're doing is the U.S. military has hired them to go in and start training officers and then also soldiers about how do you catch yourself before you get into a tailspin? How do you not label yourself with these bad labels of post-traumatic stress disorder? And how do you start to think through a different grid that says, in spite of what's happening to me and has happened to me, I can still have good come out of this. Despite the fact that I went through a traumatic event, I can live to tell a good story and a positive story. When I get a call and I'm in the barracks in the middle of nowhere in Afghanistan, and my wife calls me and says, my teenage son is really acting up and he's out of control, and what happens to that soldier in Afghanistan? They just well up with anxiety, uncertainty, inability to help out at all. Their mind goes to the worst case, right? My son is going to be on heroin by tomorrow and dead next week. Worst case possible. Isn't our mind amazing at how creative we are? We can create such, I am an expert. I got a PhD in this. I have a PhD in catastrophic thinking. That helps me a little bit in life. It actually helps me in consulting. By the way, you know what PhD stands for? Poor, hungry, and destitute. That's what, if you get a PhD, you'll be poor, hungry, and destitute. So that's just a joke, by the way. If you get a PhD, go for it, especially if Jerry's paying. And so what they're finding is you have to catch these bad thoughts early and reverse them. Does that make sense? So you go for a job interview, and I bet you some of you with disabilities, you've already tried to get a job, and guess what? Not so easy, right? Let me tell you, remember I told you the world isn't fair and everything is, you can do anything, that's not true, right? Let me tell you, and Jerry's been down this world a lot longer, right? If an employer looks at Jerry and looks at somebody who walks in, by law, they have to look at them as equal. But we know we don't live in that kind of world. They are going to look differently at you. And you know what you say? That's life. I am who I am. I've been dealt this hand, it's not by accident, and I have something to offer. And if that employer isn't the one that wants it, that one over there might. But if you go in and you get turned down and you win in with the expectation, the first employer is the one who's going to hire you because I'm darn good. I'm pretty cute, nice. You know what? You're setting yourself up for failure. You need to go in and say, I'm going to go and I'm going to present myself the best I can. And if I don't get that job, which I may not, there'll be another one down the road. I'll go interview over there. And if I don't get that one, I'll go interview over there. And if I don't get that one, I'll go interview over there. But if you go in thinking, I'm deserving of this one job that's going to be one and done, I mean, who wouldn't want me? And they turn you down and you say, woe is me, victim card comes out, right? I'm disabled, everybody treats me poorly. You play that card and you're set up for failure. You have to catch that early and say, I'm not going down that road. That path has potholes and detours that are going to do nothing but destroy me. I have to go down the road and put on a different set of thoughts. It's exactly what Scripture talks about. Put off the old self, put on the new self. Change your attitudes, right? Whatever is good, think about such things. That has to be done with intentionality. God, you know what God's talking about there? Reprogram your broken mind. All of our minds are broken. And periodically, you have to hit the reset button. And when we are followers of Christ, by the way, even non-Christians can do some of that. They can catch bad thoughts and replace it with good thoughts. The difference is a person who's not a follower of Christ cannot say, I am made in the image of likeness of God, and I know He has given me a mind and a capability of making a difference. I know I can think differently, and I need to put on the thoughts that God says about me, not just what the world says about me, what God says about me. That's part of the reprogram process. Does that make sense? Let me give you a couple of quick illustrations. Patricia Miranda. She was a chubby, unathletic high school kid who wanted to wrestle. After a bad loss on the mat, she was ridiculed. She went home and she cried, and she then made the decision, am I going to sit here and cry or not? Am I going to do something different? She resolved to work harder at training, and she did. At 24, she won a spot on the Olympic wrestling team with a bronze medal. Then she went on to Yale Law School to get a law degree. Christopher Reeves, remember him, right? The actor who fell off the horse. He determined to walk again. Doctors told him, utterly impossible with your injury that took place in your spine. You will never walk again. He was told that it couldn't happen. He began to say, I am going to commit to it. I'm going to do it. He started to get movement back, and it actually changed some of the research on walking again after a traumatic a neck injury and spine injury. Because what they found is the brain was able to do some reprogramming again, and while he never regained all that, he actually changed the approach of the medical community regarding spine and neck injuries. Anybody hear of the word name Temple Grandin? Anybody ever heard that name? You heard her? Pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who is she? Anybody know? That's right, it's Dr. Temple Grandin, right? And she has autism, but she actually is a professor of animal science at Colorado State University. How about this name? Ellen Sachs. Anybody heard that name? Oh, that's good. I finally got one. I tripped you up on it. Ellen Sachs, fascinating story. You'll never believe what disability she has. Schizophrenia. She's a graduate of Harvard Law School, and she teaches in a chaired professorship, which are about impossible to get, at the University of Southern California with schizophrenia. Isn't that amazing when you think about it? There's another one I want to introduce you to, Tim Harris. Some of you probably heard of him. Anybody ever heard of him? Oh, you gotta meet Tim. He's really amazing.
I wake up at 5:30, get a shower, do my morning routine, go around 7 o'clock to come to work. I am so excited to go to work, so I do a dance off in the parking lot. It's a dance of magic. We serve breakfast, lunch, and hugs. The hugs are the best part. I am Tim Harris, and this is my place. Oh yeah. Hey guys, welcome to my place. How you doing? I'm good. How are you? No, I'm the best part, buddy. I love you. Have you been here before? I've never been here before. Well, I'm Tim. I'm the owner. Tim's place is the special place to be at because it's run and operated by me. You guys are doing a great job right here. I love you guys. You guys are the best cooks ever. Since I was a kid, I wanted to own a restaurant and I asked my dad to help me out. I'm very glad I did. Thank you, Dad. I love you so much. I love you too, buddy. I'm very proud of you.
When he was about 14 years old, he told us that someday he was going to own a restaurant. After we all gulped and gasped, we had to take him seriously, and the result is history.
Mentor me so I can live up my dreams.
I'm amazingly proud of my brother. Just what he's accomplished in his lifetime. I mean, people can only dream, you know?
I love you, Mom.
As far as we know, we have not yet found another person with Down syndrome in this country that owns their own restaurant. We hope that other people will, though.
My favorite part of all is the people coming through that front door. How are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
Sometimes customers get sad. I give them a hug and they feel a lot better.
Oh, thank you, Tim.
The hugs are way more important than the food. The food is food, so. A double hug. Yeah, double hug. Love you guys. I'm a mean hugging machine. Oh yeah.
So let me get this straight. So you're a restaurateur.
Yes.
And
a special Olympic
athlete, and you want to gold medal.
I won more medals than Michael Phelps. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I do not let my disability crush the dreams. With people with disabilities, they can do anything they set their minds to. They're special. We are a gift to the world.
Pretty amazing, isn't it? Yeah. What did Tim do? He reframed his thoughts away from destructive to constructive. And as we conclude, I want to just kind of help you think through something. If you really are committed to wanting to be a person of influence versus a person that others just feel sorry for, you need to resolve to do a few things. Number one, I encourage you to make this pledge. I will resolve to work hard, not make excuses, and refuse to quit. Number two, I will relate well to others by striving to have more positive interactions than negative. Number three, I will reframe my thoughts towards being constructive and work to stop destructive thoughts early. And lastly, I will seek out from people who model these traits, I will seek out from them coaching and characteristics that I can follow as a leader. Does that make sense? 3 traits of success. Encourage you to reflect on those, nice and easy to remember, right?